I'll start by getting this lever in place. That's it. I don't know why it's so hard to get that thing settled. It's a shoulder screw. Got to make sure that that is centered on the shoulder of the screw, not trapped underneath it. Seems to be good. I'll get its return spring in place. Okay, so that's in position. I should be able to cock the shutter from there and have that sit correctly. That's in the cocked position. The spring here is on the wrong side of that stud. I think I can just about swing that past it. Yes, I can. Now if I hold that arm back, I can put the blade actuating ring up from underneath. And I should be able to engage that in there like that. So the blade actuating ring is now sitting in place. And I'll get its screws and washers in there. Let's get this thing back up on here where we can see it. Excuse me while I get this sitting somewhat flatter. That's not sitting correct. That's better. Blade actuating ring was sitting high there, the washer went underneath it. In this case, the 5 washers are all basically the same size. One has the side clipped off the washer. I'm not convinced that's for any good purpose. I think that's just an accident of sloppy manufacture. The whole shutter here is somewhat light and prone to moving around. I'm having trouble getting the screw started in positions like this. screwdriver's a bit magnetic there, that's not always helpful. Let me change her hands, see if it'll go better for me. Alright, one more screw and washer. Where have they rolled to? Fortunately, they've gone no distance at all. Check that those screws are tight. That's good. If we release the shutter, the blade actuating ring should shift to the end and straight back again because we've got no B lever. And it did. So I'll just bring that back to the cocked position again. Installation of the rest of the levers here on the shutter. We can get that underway. Let's get somewhere in the picture where you can see. The shutter release lever there needs to go in place. I'll get this spring here, and I've got that loosely sitting in here. You'll see that I've got this long arm is floating loose out here. That's so I can get the shorter arm in on the lever smoothly. Now this lever, I have given that a wipe with molybdenum paste through the pivot point before I assembled it, the same as I did with this thing here. Now I've got to get that spring. The short arm of the spring bears against this tab on the lever, but it's prone to going underneath. I'll put the screw in the top, stop that lever lifting. Perhaps that'll give me a fighting chance. The long arm of the spring I've got to lift up and get behind this long pin. And then tuck it down well, and now our lever here is sprung loaded, and you can see it acts against this lever here, which is the one that holds our shutter in the cocked position. So as I press my shutter release, we're moving this arm, the pin on the bottom of this arm swings this arm out, which disengages it at there on the main cam. Of course there's no B lever in here yet, we've got to put the B lever in place. We've got three pieces here that need to go in. This one, where are we in the picture? It's this one. So, get you back over here. That sits on there. That long finger goes in underneath here. This lever, which is what locks the main cam when you've got the shutter open on B, get that in there like that. Our return spring, you get this around the right way. At the moment you can see how I've got that return spring. The short leg is here and the long leg is over here. We've got a shoulder screw that goes through all of that lot. It's important that the shoulder passes through the lever and the levers and the spring, that they don't get trapped underneath the shoulder. They're free to rotate around the shoulders. That's all looking good. The long arm of this spring I've now got to lift over and tuck on the inside here. And that should be the B lever in position. So if we cock the shutter and release the shutter, it's now held in the open, blades open position on B until I release the shutter release button, and then the arm can complete its cycle and close the blades. So that part of the mechanism plate's done. I can fit the blades in place. Now at this stage, I'll cock the shutter, hold back this arm so I can move my blade actuating ring to the end of its travel, which is the blade's open position. Now I'm going to be fitting this into the case shortly, so I want to remove this little lever. So I'll just press on that tiny little circlip there and release it. Take that arm off and put it to one side. I need to fit my shutter blades in place. Now the shutter's sitting in the blade's open position, and our first blade that we want to put into the shutter goes here. Blade 1 would go here. Most Prontor shutters you'll be putting together like this will have 5 blades, because this is an interchangeable lens camera. It has 6 blades. It has a capping blade in the same position as the first blade. This is our first blade. This is our second blade. Fitting the third blade is only entertaining because we have to get the side here into a slot in this brass cylinder, and sometimes it's awkward to get that thing seated. Typically I just get the tail of this blade seated in there, lower it over the screw head, but today it ain't happening. Okay, I've just about got this achieved, I think. Okay, it's sitting there. That's the third blade. They're not usually as awkward as that. I'm not sure what it is about this particular shutter, but it just doesn't want to play the game. That's the problem. So blade number 4 sits on the top. blade number 5. Blade number 6 goes right on top of them, where blade number 1 went. Okay, now I'm going to close those blades partially by moving the blade retaining ring, pushing on one of these pins. I just want to bring them in slightly so that they're not sticking out, getting caught on me as I go past. This plate goes on now. This is the cover plate. And the cover plate is held on with only a single screw in this position at the bottom, where that notch is. All the other 3 positions in that plate have holes. This one has a notch where that screw goes. Okay, so that is all together. If I pull the blades into the closed position, that's all looking happy. And the shutter, that can go into its case. Let's find the case. Well, here's our case with its detent spring. Here's the lever that goes in that case for selecting your flash sync speed, etc., self-timer. Now where those notches are, that's where that detent runs, so I'm just running a bit of molybdenum paste down that, just so that'll move smoothly. And I'll fit the lever in the case and engage that detent spring with the notches. I think if I move this round to the V position, the self-timer position, I think that'll make it the easiest to wriggle my shutter into the case. Now here's the shutter. We've got to get this shaft through that hole, but we've also got to get the mechanism plate under that little spring contact, all at the same time. So let's see if this can be achieved without anything self-destructing. The shutters probably needs to be rotated in here slightly because that's better. Cable release was holding me up. That looks almost like it's seated in there. Checking this thing's not holding me up. It seems to be okay. Alright. That looks like that's in the case. Oh, it is now. I'm not sure what it was sticking on, but just clicked back into place. Okay, so 3 screws hold this in position. One is a longer screw, and the longer screw goes down in this corner here. And the reason it's a longer screw is that the other end of the screw holds the detent spring for the blade actuating ring in position. Now that doesn't want to start. I wonder if the shutter's not lined up correctly yet. Let's try the other 2 screws. Nothing wants to start. We can't be square in that case. Doesn't look bad. And that went in. That only leaves the third one. Okay, that's good. So there's our long screw coming through here at the bottom. I can put my detent spring in there now. Lift the tail of the detent spring up and hook it behind the post on the blade actuating ring. And I want to get my lever back on the back of the shutter here that we cock it with. Let's get that in the cocked position so I know where I am. That's the cocked position, and I know my little bracket goes on like that. So I can put the circlip back on there to hold it all together. Good. Now I can be confident that's not going to come apart. So at the moment it's cocked. If I pull the lever, the shutter should open, and it doesn't. Oh, there's got something blocking me here. What's the problem? No detent. That means that that spring is loose. It's not running in the detent. It's tucked underneath, and that's why everything's jammed up. So let me unhook that detent spring. Take out the 3 screws. Remove the circlip. Remove the lever. Wriggle the shutter from the case. Alright, let's get this in again. Get the detent in place. Here's our setting lever. Get the setting lever in place, engage the detent. I've got that round at the V position. Let's see if I can wriggle my shutter into here. Get under that flash contact. I think that's it. Just put our 3 screws in position. The longer of the 3 screws goes into the bottom position down here. is the tail of that holds the detent spring for the blade actuating ring. And I'll find that screw I've dropped. I'll cock that shutter. I'll put the lever, the setting lever, back in place. And fit the circlip. We'll see problems ahead here. Which one of you saw this thing and didn't tell me about it? Okay, it's the detent spring in position. Let's cock the shutter and see if it all works. No. Well, it wouldn't, would it? Something has dropped out of position, but I'm not sure what. So what's the problem? The problem is the detent spring here is tucked in behind under the edge of the case. Now, why it should have decided that was a clever idea, I don't know. Now let's see how that goes. No problem at all. Yes, the detent spring here was sticking down below there. It was wedged underneath the mechanism plate and the blade actuating ring. It must have happened when I was fitting it in position. So this is all go. but I've got to put that pin back in here. And to put that pin back in there, means I've got to take off the B lever and this setting lever and then slide that pin in position. Well, if you've got to, you've got to. It's lucky I'm well practiced at taking this thing apart. Now to get it spring in position, that's all good. Let's get our B lever in position. I'll cock that shutter again. Help if I put it on the right way up. Get the spring around the right way. And fit the shoulder screw. Right, finally hook that spring back where it belongs. And now the cable releases back in position and the shutter releases normally. And we've got the tab on the back, that's all in place, and we've got the 3 screws tightened up. And the next thing to do is to put the flash sync mechanism in position.